Now I think it's over to Venerable Sila Wimana to introduce this very special night. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. No need to introduce Ajahn Brahm. He's a local monk. I am a foreigner. I'm standing here on behalf of our Vihara. I would like to most welcome our speaker, Ajahn Brahm. As I said, Ajahn Brahm, one of the world-renowned monk, he was born in West London. And he went to school at Latima Upper School. And he won a scholarship for studying theoretical physics. Am I right?
You are correct.
At Cambridge University, after graduating, he was a teacher in a high school. Then I learned he went to Thailand, and he had undergone a very thorough training under well-known great master Ajahn Chah in Thailand. Now he is the abbot of Bodhiana Buddhist monastery in Australia. He is an advisor for many organizations. Some are in Australia, some are in Singapore, in Asia, in Sri Lanka as well. The latest one is he is the advisor of Anukampa Bhikkhuni projects in the UK. I don't take your time today anymore. Very welcome, Ajahn Brahm. We are honored. It's a great privilege for all of us. Thank you for coming.
And very happy to be back in my home temple, which I can only visit here once every couple of years, and when I'm away, I give into the capable hands of the Hamdro here to look after for me. This was my area where I grew up and have so many wonderful memories here. And it's great to be back in UK again. And of course, just before I get into the main part of the talk, the reason I am here is because I think many of you know I've been supporting the bringing Buddhism back to its traditions, which is also having bhikkhunis as well as bhikkhus. And there's no bhikkhuni monastery here at all. And this Venerable Chanda, she's been a bhikkhuni for 3 years. She was a 10 preceptor for, I think, 10 years or 8 years beforehand. And she'd been staying in my temple in Perth. And she kept on telling me this, comes to England and there's no place for her to stay. Sometimes I think she has to stay under a bridge, under a tree, to stay with friends. So I want to try and do something about that. So that's why we've started this Anukampa Bhikkhuni project, to see if we can get a small vihara for women here in Perth. Not Perth, that's where I came from. Still jet lagged. Here in London, which would be wonderful. And the good news is that I told Chanda, but she doesn't believe this, that I found a wonderful property. And it's the perfect property in central London, not far away from Victoria Station. We've got beautiful grounds, ample parking, which is one of the problems, finding parking. There's only one problem, and that is the owner doesn't want to sell it to us. It's really awful. Because the owner is someone called Queen Elizabeth. The property is called Buckingham Palace. And the Queen has got so many properties. I know this is being streamed live, so if Her Majesty is listening to this, or a member of the royal household, no, come on, be reasonable. You've got so many properties, and at your age, you've got to downsize. You know, I know many people with big mansions. It's hard to keep them clean these days. So you don't need all those. A small little apartment block, so you know, maybe somewhere in Chiswick. So anyway, that's my goal, but I've got plan B and plan C as well, just in case. But anyway, let's see what happens when we get some support. So I'm coming here especially to support that. So anyway, back to the subject of the talk, which is, was it? Happy dying and happy rebirth. And it's an important topic for me especially because I'm getting old, so I don't know how much longer I've got to live. But I'm actually incredibly healthy. And one of the reasons is I found out, I mean, it should be obvious to you, the secret for long life, which is drinking a lot of long life milk. It says it on the outside, you know, long life milk. So you drink some of that to live a long life. But even more than that, that's just a joke, but this is true story. There was one of my disciples, you know, he was from Lancashire, very old, and eventually, like many people, got cancer. Because he used to smoke. In those days, we never knew that smoking was bad for your health. So he would smoke a lot, and eventually he got cancer. Lots of good treatments, but then he had to be given up by the doctors. Nothing more we can do. So he got sent to a hospice, one of these facilities where people don't try to cure you, they look after you, give you palliative care to try and manage the pain and discomfort. So I went to see him there on the first day, and he told me this story. It's a wonderful story. As soon as he checked into the hospice, the first evening the nurse came and said, "What do you want for dinner?" And he said, "Well, no, I've got high cholesterol, so I can't have anything oily or greasy. I have diabetes, so I can't have anything sweet or sugary. I've got hardened arteries, so nothing with any salt in." And he went into whole things which he wasn't allowed to eat. And the nurse looked at him and said, "What on earth are you talking about? You're not going to die of a heart attack. You're not going to die of diabetes. The cancer's going to get you before any of those will. You can eat anything you like." And his eyes went wide. He said, "Really? You mean I can eat my favorite foods?" Yes. So all the foods which his wife would not allow him to eat for about 4 or 5 years, he really indulged in. Greasy, sugary, salty. And this is no exaggeration. After a couple of weeks, he had recovered so much that he walked out of the hospice, and he had another 6 months of life before he went back into the hospice to die properly. He had an extra 6 months of life. Why is that? It's because he was having some happiness as well, some enjoyment, which sometimes in medicine we forget that that is an important part of good health. It's not just what you eat, but whether you enjoy it as well. So it's the same with dying. Dying happily. Why not? Now, I am in good health, but if you ask some of the monks in my monastery, I did come very close to dying when I was in Perth a few months ago. And that was when I made a joke, and I laugh at my own jokes as well. And I thought it was so funny that I almost choked. And so I think one day it's going to happen. That's the way I'm going to die. I'm going to make a joke, I'm going to laugh, not be able to breathe and pass out. And so, how can we actually die well and die even happily? And again, it's very much one's attitude, which is something which we develop in a religion like Buddhism. This beautiful attitude, it's not so much what you do or what happens to you, it's how you react to it. That is the most important. And there's so many other stories. One of the stories which comes up is about a year or two ago. I was invited to go into the ICU of one of the major hospitals in Perth because one of the disciples' father, I think Malaysian Chinese, was really sick and was dying. And they wanted a Buddhist monk to do some chanting for them. Now my chanting is really powerful. I've been a monk for so many years, really good meditator, keeping my precepts. Wow, it's really strong. And so, when I went to the bedside, I really gave him that 100%, 5-star chanting. And it worked. It was like a miracle. He recovered. He didn't die. He was in ICU, and miracle, he recovered. And after that, the family was so upset at me. They scolded me, they told me off because they'd all arrived from overseas to see their father, their uncle, on his last few days of life. They'd arranged the funeral, everything was settled, and I came along and break up all their plans. They said, Ajahn Brahm, we wanted you to chant so you could have a peaceful death, not so he recovers. So it's because of that I hope you do the same, Venerable. If you go to chant for someone in hospital, please ask the family what type of chanting they want. Is it dying peacefully chanting or getting better chanting? The two are different. Otherwise we get in big problems. That's a true story. Some of the stories you have as a Buddhist monk, you can make a comedy series out of this, and I'm sure it will happen one day. But anyway, that sometimes, why did he get better? It gave him a boost of energy and happiness. I'm not sure if any of you heard my last talk, which I gave in Perth last Friday. Actually, I think the internet wasn't working. I think it was not live streamed, but put on afterwards. And it reminded me of a story from my own life when I was a student. When I was a student, I got the flu because I wasn't meditating in those days. I'm not meditating enough. These days you don't get the flu. You got really strong meditation. And anyway, I was meditating and I had the flu. So badly, all the other students in the house I was sharing went off to their lectures, and I was laying in bed, feeling, wondering whether suicide was the best option. I felt so terrible. But when you feel so terrible, you just haven't got the energy to do anything. So I felt really, really terrible, with stuff coming out of your nose and coughing and your eyes just dripping water and felt just like death. And I was disturbed by somebody ringing the doorbell. Go away. And they kept on ringing the doorbell. Go away. And they kept on ringing the doorbell, so I staggered out of bed. I managed to get, still in my pajamas, managed to open the door. What do you want? And the guy said, I have a delivery for Peter Betts. That's my lay name. Really, what? And it was my hi-fi system. Those of you who are as old as me, and actually, do you know my age? How old I am? I am now, it's still October, okay. I am now 784. I'm a monk. I keep my precepts venerable. I cannot lie. I am Isn't that cool? To see a monk who's 784, who doesn't lie. How would I say I am? I am 784 months old. I think it's much cooler to count your years in months. Why not? So I'm 700. So anyway, really, really sick, and go to the door. Hi-fi system. In those days, these days everything you can want to listen to can fit in your iPhone. These days, about big boxes. And I said, I was actually quite excited. I can listen to some music now. And so I said, thank you, signed the form, had some energy now, and managed to take all those boxes up the stairs to the second floor where my room was, unpack them all, and actually connect everything together, which takes a while. And by the time, maybe an hour later, when I put on my first record, I noticed something very strange. My flu had gone, totally. I was listening actually to, for those of you of my generation, Jimi Hendrix. The first track I listened to, I noticed no snot coming out of my nose, no sort of coughing, no signs of any fever at all, lots of energy. So that is my recommendation if anyone gets flu, Jimi Hendrix. Not Jimi Hendrix, it was just the happiness, the joy which was actually coming up, was overcoming any fevers or any sicknesses. Never underestimate the power of such happiness and joy. For that fellow Ted, his name was, he got 6 months extra life because he's enjoying his food. For me, just enjoying some music, which I liked, gave me extra energy. And now I think the reason why I'm so healthy, probably the healthiest monk in my monastery, even though I'm one of the oldest, is because I have a lot of happiness in my life. I really enjoy what I do. This is my passion. And I think you all know if you enjoy what you're doing, you usually do it really well. And I think I'm doing my job pretty well. Actually, too well. Which means I get stopped by people wanting to have an autograph. Why on earth do you want to have an autograph of me? Why on earth do you want a photo of me? I'm not Brad Pitt. I'm an old fat monk. Because some of the nuns in my monastery in Perth, they asked me if I was going to be around next week. And I said, I'm around every day. So when I tell a joke, I don't care if you like it or not. I've heard that joke many times because I've said it many times. But anyhow, I enjoy what I'm doing, and that happiness is one of the reasons why I am healthy. And why I probably will live a long life, simply because that happiness keeps everything moving pretty well inside your body. So please never... Remember there was apparently a movie, Patch Adams, about this doctor who went around hospitals in the United States dressed as a fairy. Now, don't go that far. But you can understand the power of happiness. Now, okay, that's with sickness and old age as well. Why can't, just because you're old, doesn't mean you have to keep complaining. So please, when two old people meet together, don't tell about your ailments and your latest operation and whatever else you've had. That really just tires everyone when I keep... I had to see the doctor yesterday. Oh, so was me. And they talk about, I've just had a hip replacement. Oh, yeah, I've had a knee job. I've had something else. Oh, come on, you old guys. Talk about something else. Because when you start talking about that sort of stuff, of course, that brings you down. One of my favourite stories is of these two old men. And one was one of these complainers. They were in their 80s. And on a park bench one sunny afternoon, talking to one another. And one said to the other, being old is so terrible. I got sort of arthritis. I've got this knee problem. I've got the back problem. And I can't eat what I want anymore. It's just terrible being old. And he said, how do you feel, to his friend? He said, I feel like a newborn baby. So how can that be? You're older than I am. How can that be? Look, I've got no hair, I've got no teeth, and I just wet my pants. I feel like a newborn baby. So at least he's happy. So that's the important part of life. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. In Buddhism, you said the two arrows. The physical arrow, the mental arrow. Physical arrow you can't do much about. You have pain, you have sicknesses, disappointments in life. That is part of life. Life not going the way you would like it to do. But the mental arrow, that's where you have full power, especially as a Buddhist, to take that mental arrow out. Instead of saying, I don't like this, to say, I accept this, I embrace this. And just that much, just embracing the pain, the difficulties, the fact that you're not going to be here forever, even death, embracing that rather than trying to fight it, that makes all the difference. Oh, one of, again, the favourite stories is, this came up again because you see the karma of when you do some kindness, an act of goodness, in this case giving good advice to someone, it always comes back to you. And this was a young Sri Lankan man over in Australia. His parents had moved to Australia when he was a young kid. So he came to my Dharma school for kids maybe about 30 years ago, and saw him through school, and he would actually always come for blessings for his exams. Now some people think blessings don't work. But do you know that Leicester City Football Club, owned by a very devout Buddhist, they won the English Premier League last season? And the reason why was this. The owner flew Buddhist monks to every home game. And the Buddhist monks couldn't be in the stands watching the soccer. They were in a room underneath the stands, where as soon as the whistle went to kick off, they started their chanting and meditation for all the players. And that is actually why Leicester City won the Premier League. It's true. So you Sri Lankans, you've got heaps of monks. Why on earth can't you get them to get under the stands during the cricket matches and chant their heads off? It does work. And of course, my own story, which I got into big trouble, I kept this very secret for many years because I would have been in big trouble because of this. That was quite a few years ago. The Sri Lankan cricket team were in my town of Perth playing Australians in a one-day match. And at the lunch break, the Sri Lankans were doing very bad. Australians were just beating them easily. So apparently, what happened, the team asked one of the young Sri Lankan boys, is there any good monks in town? We need some help. And so they came to me very quickly and asked for pirit thread. You know, the string which the Sri Lankans put around their hands. And so I obliged. I gave them 12 pieces. I know my cricket, you have a 12th man, just in case. So I made them 12 pieces of holy thread, and I sent them off to the cricket ground. Unfortunately, that was a bit too late because Sri Lanka were too far behind. So Australia won that game. But that was a warm-up match for the World Cup cricket in India and Sri Lanka. And all you Sri Lankans especially know what happened. The final was between Australia and Sri Lanka won. They beat Australia. The Australians were so upset. The Sri Lankans were so happy when you won the World Cup cricket. And I saw that the following day, at the front page of the newspaper, your captain of your cricket team, Arjuna Ranatunga, holding up the World Cup. And as soon as I saw that picture, I thought, oh God, he's wearing my string. It was my holy string, which meant Australia lost and Sri Lanka won. And if Australia had found out, they would take away my passport and kick me out of the country. Because cricket, even in Australia, is more important than religion. So it actually works. So anyway, so sometimes, but how come it works? And one of the reasons it works, it gives people confidence. The fact you can do it. It's the reason why you're in a stadium and you're shouting, you're supporting, you're by a bedside, you're extending the love to the person who's died. Yeah, you can do this, you can make this happen. That actually encourages people. Problem with our modern world, we're just so complainers. We're always seeing the wrong things in life. I'm not going to say in detail about the 2 bad bricks in the wall simile. If you haven't heard that yet, I don't know where you've been in the Buddhist world. Everybody knows that. Don't look at the 2 bad bricks in the wall, look at the 998 good bricks in the wall. Then you don't want to destroy anything. The same with dying. Why can't we look at dying in a totally different way? Like this. Suppose the London Buddhist Vihara, in collaboration with my temple in Perth, Buddhist Society of Western Australia, suppose that in this wonderful evening we decided to give a door prize to one of you lucky people, because you've got tickets so we know who you are. One person can win the door prize, which is really special. You can have an all expenses paid holiday. Where will be your favourite destination? Say, let's call it Bali. First class flights for 2 to Bali, with a first class hotel. And, no, 5-star hotel. No, let's make it 6-star hotel. And for 2 weeks, with £500 shopping money every day. Now suppose that was a prize, and suppose that it came up. You won that. How would you feel? Would you feel happy and delighted? First class tickets to Bali for a holiday in paradise, 6-star hotel, all expenses paid, and £500 shopping money every day. Wouldn't you be delighted? Wouldn't you be counting the days till you actually went? 1 week to go, 6 weeks to go, 5 days 6 days to go, 5 days to go. You could hardly wait. And the night before you're about to go, you probably wouldn't be able to sleep that night. You'd be so excited. Now, imagine the doctor said, you've only got 1 week to live. How would you feel? Would you be excited because you've been a good Buddhist, coming to the temple, giving lots of donation, keeping your seal, being kind and generous to everybody? You know you're going to go to heaven. Which is better, heaven or Bali? So why isn't it the case? Only 7 days to go. Doctor, can you give me 5 days, please? I can't wait. 6 days to go, 5 days, the countdown's coming. The closer you get to your death, you get more excited. Only 1 day to go. I'm going to heaven. It's wonderful. Why not? Because a lot of people, when they get excited if they're going to Bali, but they don't get excited when they're going to die. Why? One of the reasons is because we're so attached to this life. We don't know any other life than this. That's one of the reasons why we're scared, because of lack of knowledge. If you really knew what's going to happen to you when you die, you say, bring it on, doctor. So, looking at life and death in a different way, it actually changes the whole attitude to this. And of course, one way of learning how to die well is understanding. You're not going to disappear. We can't get rid of you that easily. You know that you're going to get reborn again. And there's so much hard evidence that rebirth happens. And why people can't see this is just, one of the reasons is we've become far too materialist society. We haven't got enough understanding about the nature of the mind. Back to, this is Western culture, not Asian culture is far superior in this regard, I must admit. We, Western culture, say we got all of our philosophy, the foundation of that came from Greece, people like Aristotle, and anybody who's ever read Aristotle will see that the Greeks always had 6 senses. Not the 5 senses we're left with in the West. The 6 senses, seeing, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and the mind. There were 6 senses in ancient Greece. And Aristotle called the mind the common sense. Because whatever you see with your eyes, hear with your ears, smell, taste, and feel with your body, your mind can also see that as well. That's why it's common to all the other 5 senses. I often say that I don't know when this happened, but in 2,200 or 300 years since Aristotle, the Western world has not only lost its mind, but it's abandoned its common sense. We've become far too materialist. And Asian culture, we've always had those 6 senses. Buddhism always had that 6th sense of the mind. And because we've lost that, That is one of the reasons why we just don't understand how to love, how to care, how to forgive, how to die, about rebirth, because that's all the realm of the mind. That's where that lives. And so because of that, we become far too materialistic, and too many people believe, oh, when you die, that's it, you're gone. And to me that is totally ridiculous. There's too many people I have known who recognize their past lives. They've seen them. They've been there before. In fact, one of the first talks which I gave at the London Buddhist Vihara was actually when it was in Heathfield Gardens. And I gave a talk on reincarnation, rebirth, if you like. And one of the subjects, I don't know what happened to him, a young Sri Lankan man who's one of the subjects in Professor Ian Stevenson's 7 cases suggestive of rebirth. He was there. He listened to my talk and he came up afterwards. I always remember what he told me. He said that was the worst thing in my life I'd ever done, was actually to participate in a study and tell the professor about my past life memories. I shouldn't have done that, he said, because it was published and all the children at school learnt about that, and he got teased and bullied relentlessly. How's your wife? They said. You know, because what people are like in schools, anything which sets you apart from others, you get bullied on. So he said I had a terrible time at school. And that was one of the reasons, the first times I realized that many people keep those past life memories a secret. But it's out there and many people remember them. Exactly what happened, in your previous life. They've only ever, in theoretical physics, they've only ever managed to find one Higgs boson in CERN. And because they only found one, and even that is a bit dubious, because of that, the God particle, theoretical physics said, 2 people were awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics, and they proved that Higgs bosons exist. They only found one. There's been hundreds of people who've given clear records of previous lives with information which cannot be gained in any other way, but still they say it has not been proved. As far as I'm concerned, as a physicist, if you give the same requirements of proof, the same causes for saying it's been proved, to things like reincarnation and to Higgs boson, reincarnation has been proved many, many times over. You have lived before. And that explains so many things about life. The Mozarts, the child prodigies. I remember there was one of those child prodigies, which I met in Cambridge. He was a maths prodigy. Before he went to Cambridge, he already had a degree, an external degree from London. I remember meeting him at the observatory in Cambridge. Just actually interesting, after going to the cinema and seeing 2001: A Space Odyssey. So really spacing out, and I was a member of the Astronomical Society as well, so we had, any time we could go to this big observatory, one of those old-fashioned ones, where there's a big dome, and you sit in a chair, and it opens up. That was so cool, especially after seeing Space Odyssey. So, and he was actually there. He spent most of his time there. He said he doesn't do anything else except just observe the stars. He plateaued. His ability in maths and science plateaued at that level, and he could never get further. So many child prodigies actually do that. They get to a certain level really quickly, and they never get any further. All they're doing is remembering their previous lives, what they learned in their last life, and they cannot take it any further. So there's many times like that. And sometimes it also explains the old phenomena, love at first sight. Now, I had love at first sight, but I'll tell you that after this other story, first of all, because this is an Australian story. I'll tell you my love at first sight afterwards. Always keep the audience in suspense, Amdra. So this was a young lady called Kelly in Adelaide. Just an ordinary woman, an aspiring actress, but getting nowhere in her career. And one evening she went with her best friend to the cinema to watch a movie. And the movie was Grease, starring John Travolta. I think many of you know that movie. And she went to the cinema, and like most cinemas, they had the placards outside, the posters. And with her best friend, she went to that movie theatre, and she stopped at the poster and pointed to John Travolta and said, "I am going to marry that man." Such a ridiculous thing to say. But she did. And it's it's probably the most stable marriage in Hollywood. They were been together, and she was just an Australian from Adelaide, nobody, and eventually they met, and they're still together. John and Kelly Travolta. That's how they met. Please explain that for me. Other than they knew each other before. And there's so many cases. My case of love at first sight, Venerable. My case of love at first sight was as a student in Cambridge. And of all places I was going to the Buddhist Society of Cambridge University. And you know who I fell in love with? Well, it wasn't a person. I saw my first monk. And as soon as I saw him, and I can still remember this experience, as soon as I saw that monk, I fell in love with the robe. That was my love at first sight. There's something really important. So, it's not exactly as you expected. My love at first sight was being a Buddhist monk. So, and we've been together, my robe and I, for over 40 years. We love each other. So, how can you explain this? But when you know the nature of the mind, this sixth sense, it becomes so obvious. Not only how to look after your body. What does it say in the Dhammapada? The mind is the forerunner of all things. And my goodness, it is. Even in physics, without a mind, there's no physics. It comes out of quantum physics, Schrödinger's equation, the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics. Without a mind, without an observation, you need a mind to observe. The Schrödinger equation doesn't collapse, and the world is just a smear of probabilities. It doesn't exist until there's a person, a being, who observes it. That's hard-nosed quantum physics, not spirituality, but theoretical physics, and I'm qualified to know what I'm talking about. And so the mind is right there, but people still resist it. Aristotle had it, a few physicists have this. One of my best friends, who I'm seeing tomorrow for lunch, you'll see. Oh no, you probably won't see him. He's Professor Bernard Carr. He's just emeritus professor. He just retired just this year. Emeritus professor of Queen Mary College, London University. Emeritus professor of theoretical physics. Basically, we grew up together in Cambridge. And you know, he was the first Buddhist I met, Venerable. Because as soon as I went to Cambridge University, they had, for the students, they called it Societies Fair. So all the different clubs and societies were in the Corn Exchange, a big building in Cambridge, and you could join any society you wished. There was everything. It was Cambridge. Fox hunting society. If you want to do fox hunting, you could do fox hunting. You could do every type of sport available. And I was looking for, get my social life together at college, and I went to all these societies. And honestly, my eyes went wide when I saw Buddhist society. I never expected such a thing to exist. I never knew, not one Buddhist. None of my family were Buddhists. They couldn't even spell the word, let alone know what it meant. And so I saw Buddhist society, and I went up to the counter and I said, I want to join. And the man behind the counter, the student, said, no, you don't have to join. Just, come and see first of all. I said, no, I want to join. I'm a Buddhist. He said, no, you don't have to. Just come to a talk, and maybe after a few talks, if you like it, you can join. And I got a pound note out of my wallet, and I was very poor, slammed it on the table. I want to join. And so I forced him to accept my pound and join me up. And that was Professor Bernard Carr. He's the first Buddhist I ever met. And so he became a lifelong friend. He became a disciple of Stephen Hawkins. Stephen Hawkins was his professor in his PhD thesis. He also did the things about white holes. An interesting thing, I'm going totally off tangent, on a tangent now, totally off course here. I don't usually watch movies, but I did watch the movie about Stephen Hawkins, The Theory of Everything, I think it was called. The reason was because, this was, I never knew him. I would have met him for sure. But this was, a little bit my generation, a bit before, and about Cambridge. And my subject, it was like relevant to me. So it wasn't entertainment for me, it was just information. And there's one thing which he said at the very end, I was quoted, that Stephen now understands a world, a universe without boundaries. Now what does that mean? When he said that, my ears picked up, yes, you really are a Buddhist, Stephen. And because it's something which we always are challenged by, the boundaries of the universe and the boundaries of life. Actually, it does fit into this talk because the boundaries of this life, birth and death, are they real boundaries? To understand what I mean in this simile, I have to go back maybe 400 or 500 years, when most people in all countries of our planet, even in India, Sri Lanka, and also in China, all believed this world was flat. And if you get on a boat, the only means of long-distance transport, if you go far enough in a boat, you'll come to the boundary of this planet, the edge of Earth, and fall off into some chasm. But no one could actually really perceive what that end, the boundary of planet Earth, actually could be. And now we are so learned. We know the Earth is not flat. It is a sphere, and you can go on a boat, or even better on an aircraft. You can go round and round and round, never finding an edge, a boundary to planet Earth. It's a sphere. Now you all understand that. Next level, the universe, space. Is that got a boundary to it? And I remember as a student, I know it's a schoolboy, going on the 260 or 266 bus. Is it still the same number from Acton, go to Hammersmith? Still the same number, I remember that. And sometimes I'll be sitting there going to school, just wondering about the edge of space. If you go far enough, can you come to the edge of space? A place where is a big brick wall by the Ealing Council saying you can't go any further. Some sort of regulation by those who run the universe. Or is it a barbed wire fence with razor wire? Well, how could the end of the universe actually appear? And I started imagining all sorts of possibilities. I could never actually imagine anything which made sense. And there was a very eloquent, simple physics proof that the universe cannot be infinite. It cannot go on forever. And indeed, when you went to university, you found out the answer. Basic Einstein general relativity. The universe is curved. It's bent. It is like a sphere, but with another dimension to it. So, whichever way you go, if you had a spaceship going at warp speed 7 in Star Trek, that's the last thing I used to watch as a schoolboy. If you go fast enough in any direction, from here, from the London Buddhist Vihara, you would end up back at the London Buddhist Vihara. All roads in space lead back here, Venerable. Or anywhere you are, because this is the same as a sphere with another direction. Now that is basic science. Every scientist would agree with that. This universe, limited space with no boundaries, no edges to it, no beginnings, no end. That is true. So let's go to the next level in this argument. Time. Why should time have a boundary, an edge? And that is what Stephen Hawking was saying. He now knows a universe with no boundaries in time or space. But it can still be limited duration, going round and round. That means no beginning, no end. The Big Bang was not the beginning of the universe. It was things before the Big Bang. Just like the Lord Buddha said, that you cannot discern a beginning of all of this, nor an end. Now to me, that was what was called eloquent, a beautiful answer to the beginnings and ends of the universe, which means no more need for a creator or a God, and all the arguments and wars which come when we have a creator. No creator. And I say anyone who thinks of beginning of the world and an end of the world, I call them like people who believe in a flat earth, people who believe in flat time, flat timers. And this is just something which people look back upon in maybe 50, 100 years' time, thinking how stupid we were. Just like people look back 500 years, people who believed in a flat earth, how stupid they were. Curved time, going round and round. That is beautiful and eloquent. What's that got to do with the subject of this talk? Curved life. Round and round. One birth after the other. That death is just a part of the cycle. It's not an ending. Even the mind without boundaries. Birth is not your beginning. Death is not your end. And you can remember that if you want to. Two ways of doing it. One way is through meditation, and those of you who want to do it through meditation, I've taught people this, it works. You've got to have pretty good meditation to do it. What you do is you get into some of the deep stillnesses of meditation. For goodness sake, don't concentrate. That is a terrible word that does not make the mind peaceful. It doesn't give it power. Stillness gives it power. So meditation, samadhi, means stillness. When the mind is still, it builds up incredible power. Mindfulness goes to another level, really powerful. And you can feel that. Whenever you look at something, it gets so beautiful. You've got power in your mind. So when that mind gets very powerful, you just say to yourself, think, just even subverbally, what is my earliest memory? If your mind is ready, you get it straight away. And I don't know why this is. Usually you get early life memory first of all, early this life. So I am pushing my Vinaya a little bit, Venerable, so please forgive me, but I'm just within the rules. Because as a monk, you're not allowed, permitted, to give any sort of any information except to other monks about things like past life memories or any of your abilities in meditation or attainments on the path. You're not allowed to. That's the 8th rule in the Pajitya section. You can check me up on that one. But I know a few loopholes. And this is one of them. You can't say about your previous life, but this life you can. So, one occasion, great meditation, really get the power going. I asked myself, what's my earliest memory? And straight away, immediately, no sort of waiting period, there was a smell in my nose. It wasn't the smell in the meditation hall where this happened. I recognized that straight away. And I recognized that that smell was the smell of my baby's pram. You know, the pram, the stroller, which you push people in. And then straight away I was back there in the pram. These memories are not like the memories of what you had for breakfast this morning. This is a re-experience. You're right there. And you can explore. So I was exploring my baby's pram. I was back being a baby. like your adult mind in a baby's body, and experiencing all this stuff which is around. One of the things I forgot after all these years, remembered one of my favorite baby's toys. It was not plastic, it was almost like porcelain pig. It was Cambridge blue, light blue, had some beads inside. It was called Porky the Pig by my mum, and she would walk it, just very low tech, and I would love that little pig, my favourite toy, from back when I was only a few weeks old. In my pram, could smell it, could explore it, just plain black with white sheets. And when I came out afterwards, that was really weird. And one of the things I remember telling a doctor, the experience, that is actually quite interesting, because at that time of your birth, the most dominant sense is the smell. You don't recognize your surroundings with your eyes. That actually becomes dominant later on in your development. Beginning of your life, babies recognize everything, their surroundings, by their smell. And knowing that personally, I advise you, if ever you are a mother with a young baby, for goodness sake, do not change your perfume. Otherwise, your baby will not recognize you. They recognize you by the smell. Now, that's great experience, because that shows you just how you can remember these things through the mind. The other way is through hypnosis, through regression. And the next thing you do is earlier, please. Now, I can only do other people's memories from here on, because I can't say my own. That's against my rules. So the earlier memories, usually in your womb, in the mother's womb. Earlier, please. And you get your past life memories. And once you get your own memories, no longer do you have any doubt that yes, you have lived before. There's no boundaries to this life and death. And people ask me, why do you do that for? If you can't do it that way, the easier way is through hypnotic regression. And these days, people who do this are getting more and more skilled, so actually you can get more and more people under sufficient hypnosis so they can remember their previous lives. Sometimes they call it these days regression therapy, because they usually use this for people who have some issues in their life which psychologists or even doctors can't deal with, even like suicidal people or people who've got phobias like flying. And even if people don't believe in reincarnation or rebirth, when actually they have these memories, their phobia or their sicknesses disappear almost totally. One particular case, which I heard of from one of my close disciples, there was this young lady from Sydney who was suffering from anorexia. Actually, I suffer from that as well. I do, because I always wondered, why I look fat. And I looked in the dictionary. The dictionary definition of anorexia is a person who looks in the mirror and thinks they're fat. And that's me. It fits. They believe they're fat, so they try. I've got all these excuses. So one of my other excuses for putting on weight is that it's also, just I'm following my teacher. My teacher was fat, and not only that, when I first grew up, when I was interested in religion, I had people you try and live up to, your icons in life, the people you like to imitate. And the one person which I always wanted to be like, because one of the most generous people in our culture, one of the kindest people, one of the happiest people in our culture, and one who's lived, he was old even when I was young, and he's still alive. Santa Claus, Father Christmas, ho, ho, ho. He's happy, he's always laughing, he's always very generous, gives all his presents to kids, and he's living a lot, and he's also fat. So he's the thing I'm trying to live up to. The Santa Claus of Buddhism. Or if ho, 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 ho. In fact, that somebody gave me this nickname in Perth. You know, people like giving people nicknames. I don't mind. It is not being disrespectful to a monk. I like this nickname, and if you want to use it for me, fine. And they called me once, instead of Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Donut. And why Ajahn Donut, I asked? Well, think about it. You know, you're round, you're sweet, and you're holy in the middle. Such a donut. Anyway, back to what I was talking. What was I talking about? I was talking about reincarnation, rebirth. Oh yeah, this lady who had anorexia, about 17 years of age. So when she went to this therapist to get regressed hypnotically, she had to be with her mother. You know, that's the rules, because you're underage, under 18. So the mother was sitting there, and the therapist was regressing. You know, this 17-year-old. And she was an easy subject, and she remembered in her previous life that she was the younger of two sisters. Her elder sister was a pretty one. She was plain. And they both fell in love with the same boy. They both loved this boy a lot. And being a man, he chose the more attractive of those two sisters, the elder sister. And the younger sister was so broken-hearted, so devastated, she committed suicide. And that was one of the reasons why she was anorexic. Not being what she thought of being attractive had caused such suffering in her that she killed herself. That this life, this next life, she was not going to let being unattractive cause her so much pain. So she was overdoing it, trying to be what she thought was attractive to men. You can understand that. But the interesting part of this story was the mother. The mother started becoming the hysterical one, crying and sobbing. And the therapist had two people to look after now. So she took the daughter out of hypnosis first of all, settled her down, and asked the mother, "Why are you acting so hysterically?" And the mother said, "I was their elder sister. And I never told my daughter about my sister who committed suicide. It was one of those dark secrets of the family we hide, we're embarrassed about. I was their older sister. In fact." And you can understand why the rebirth happened like that. The daughter, the younger sister who killed herself, she could not be the husband, could not be the wife of the man she loved so much, but at least she'd get reborn as the daughter. That attraction brought her back to that life. Those are sorts of things you can't make up. So this is exactly what happens. And for those people who keep asking the same old question, why is it then there's more people alive today than have probably ever died? If we were all reincarnated, where do we come from? And the answer is so obvious, and it explains many other unexplained phenomena in our modern world. As far as Buddhism is concerned, we can get reborn from many different realms, not just the human realm. We can get reborn from the animal realm. I never think the animals are so below us. If anybody wants to check on this, please get on the internet and Google in Alex, that's A-L-E-X, the parrot. If you haven't seen these, it'll change your ideas of the gap between humanity and the animal realm. Alex the parrot in St. Louis, Missouri, an African grey parrot who lives, I think, on average 50 or 60 years, was taught language. We all know that parrots can say pretty Polly, pieces of 8 in the movies, but they can say much more than that. And these psychologists used a method developed for people with learning disabilities to teach the parrot a language and a vocabulary. And if you watch many of the YouTube videos of Alex the parrot, it's really spooky. That Alex can speak perfect English and have a conversation with people. And this is not special effects. This is not digitalized. This is a real parrot speaking, having a conversation, and also showing emotions. The one I like is when he keeps saying, "Can I go now? I'm bored." It's a parrot with attitude. And once you actually see that and get it into your head that we're not that different from animals, you can understand why. Where have all these people come from? Some of us have come from previous human lives. Many of us were animals in our previous life. Now that explains many phenomena like Donald Trump, like terrorists. And whenever you look at your kids and say, "You're little monkeys," you don't know how true that may be. The animal realm has decreased enormously as human beings have increased. Do the sums. Now you know where many of us have come from. So now that explains so much. But we do get reborn from animal realms. And that's just part of things. And don't think we are that different, that superior. And even the scientist, Linnaeus, I think he was Linnaeus, I think he was a Dutch guy. He was a person who started off the idea of species, trying to divide all known living organisms into the different classes called species. In order to do that, he had to have some way of dividing, something so he could apply it to all different species, in order, some methodology. And he used that methodology carefully and without any discrimination with all the species except when he came to human beings. And he admitted this in his biography. For when it came to human beings, he changed the rules. Because according to his methodology, human beings, gorillas, and chimpanzees were the same species. But he could not publish that result because in that time no one would accept it. They think he was mad. So he changed his rules and he separated human beings into Homo sapiens and the gorillas and chimpanzees as primates and a few others, orangutans and stuff. But according to him, we are the same species. And he bent his science for political reasons. So never actually think that we're so superior. We're actually the same as far as species is concerned. So that's why rebirth can happen between these places. So anyway, you can find out yourself, even the whole process. And it also explains some really other interesting phenomena. One of those interesting phenomena I only heard about this year, because this came from one of my monks in Australia. And he was a Sikh for his family, but you got the freedom, you can change your religion if you want to. So he came to study in Perth, and now he's one of my monks from the Punjab, from a small village in that part of India. And he said in this village what happened one day was an old woman passed away in the morning. Now in order to understand this story, you may have some Sikh friends here in London. It seems that most of the men are called Singh, and the women are called Dur, D-U-R. So they all have the same surname. So this old woman died early in the morning, and being a village, they got some wood together for funeral pyre to do the ceremony that evening. But before they could actually put her on the bonfire and cremate her, she came to again. She came back to life. And not only did she come back to life, but she had a near-death experience, and this is what she said happened. So once she died, she floated out of her body, and these two spirits came and grabbed her and dragged her to this place where the head spirit took one look at these two lesser spirits carrying this dead woman and said, "You stupid people, you've made a mistake. You've got the wrong woman." And so they had to drag her back. That's what she remembered, and she told. And they dragged her back to her body, and then she came alive again. And 1 hour after, or very shortly after, she came back to life again, there was another woman in the village with the same name. She suddenly died. This time they got the right one. So 2 people with the same name, but they got the wrong person. No, even spirits make mistakes sometimes. So for goodness sake, don't have the same name as somebody else. Otherwise you might die when you're not really supposed to. They get the wrong person. Mistaken identity, it does sometimes happen. So that was a really weird story, but it sometimes happens. It also, it explains about what ghosts are. Because I love telling this story. This was an Australian woman. She came here to England, on holiday. One of the things like people in Australia love to do when they come here is visit the old castles. Because we don't have castles in Australia. So she went to one of these old castles, and you know from your history that many, many bad things happen in those castles. So if you want to find a ghost, that's a great place to start looking. So she went into this castle with a guide and went down these spooky corridors, which are really dark, and the floorboards creak, and the wind whistles through the windows. And even though that she was a mature person, she was really on edge after going through this castle. She was really spooked. So when the tour was over, she asked the guide, he said, have you ever seen a ghost in this castle? And he replied, in all the years I've been living in this castle, I've never ever seen a ghost. And she said, how long have you been living in this castle? And he said, 300 years. So it explains ghosts and all these other phenomena, which are real, they happen, and many people. One of my beautiful ghost stories, one of a good friend, he was from England, Englishman, living by himself, so down to earth. And he woke up one night in his house, turned on the lights. In full view was his mother, literally standing at the end of the bed. His mother lives in Essex. He saw her there. He knew straight away this was a ghost. And he was not at all scared. In fact, he was really moved because his mother was smiling at him. He hadn't seen his mother for quite a few months. And he realized his mother must be dead. And it was his last chance to see his mum. His mum was just standing there, smiling at him for about 4 or 5 minutes, clear as if you can see me now. And after 5 minutes, she just faded away. And he felt so happy, as if you would do. If that's your mother and you haven't seen her for a while because you live in the other side of the world, and she comes to visit you, even though you know she's dead. That's just such a meaningful, beautiful experience. Being English, what do you do next? You get up and make yourself a cup of tea. That's tradition. So he got himself a cup of tea, and he was actually drinking the tea. Telephone rang, sister from London, saying, Pete, we've got some bad news for you, Mum's dead. And he said, yeah, I know. She's just been visiting me. And he told the story of how this beautiful thing happened in his life. He saw his mother one last time as a ghost. Not at all scared, but so moved with love that his mother had come to see him one last time. Now those are real ghost stories. The other one I told was just a joke about being a guide in a castle. But on another ghost story recently, just a beautiful one. One of my friends told this story. We've got even photographs of this. It was a dog. People love their dog so much. And the dog would go to work with this man. He was a tradesman. Go in the back of, they call them utes in Australia, these cars with a pickup tray at the back where you put your tools and other stuff on. And anyway, the man got up to go to work one morning. I said, no, sorry, I've got to go back the day before. The day before, the dog was really sick, took him to the vet, and the vet said, there's no other choice, we have to put your dog down. Had to euthanize it, kill it. So the dog died the day before, in the guy's arms. He was obviously very sad and very moved, but you have to get on with life. So anyway, he went back home the following morning, get up to go to work, opened the door, and he said there was a dog who looked exactly the same as my dog, standing outside. Exactly the same, but it couldn't be his dog, because his dog had died the day before in his arms. Looked exactly the same. And before he could stop it, the dog ran past him into the house and went to all the favourite corners in the house where it liked to sleep. Went outside the house where it would always drink from a leaking tap, and then went upstairs to where his wife was still sleeping, because the guy gets up early to go to work. Tradespeople always get up very early and start work early. And his wife was half asleep when the dog kissed her, because that's what the dog would always do, to kiss the guy's wife. And kissed. And then the dog went down and just wanted to get outside, wanted to jump in the tray to go to work with his master. But at that the master said no. And he drove off without the dog. And that's the last time he ever saw the dog. A ghost dog, coming one last time to see his favourite places in the house where he'd lived, and he'd drink from his favourite tap, and even kiss the wife. So be very careful in the morning what you're kissing when you're half asleep. And he's got photos of this, which he showed me. I have them on my tablet. So, the idea of a mind surviving death, this is actually what happens. Once you see what the mind is, you can understand why it can happen. So anyway, what am I supposed to be talking? Happy dying, happy rebirth. How you get reborn depends a lot on just your state of mind. And if you're really happy, you live a long life, a very healthy, enjoyable life, a meaningful life. But not only that even you die pretty peacefully. I was saying this to quite a few people because one of the biggest diseases these days is dementia. My mother for 3 years had dementia, couldn't even recognize me. And I'm so easy to recognize. There's not many people dressed like this in London. Here, okay, but outside. But she wouldn't recognize me at all. But she was always a very positive woman in her life. So when she get dementia, just the character traits, that carried over into dementia. She couldn't really think it, that's just her nature. And many other people have told me that when a person gets dementia, if you've been very positive in your life, very kind, easygoing, when you've got dementia, you'll actually go through that very peacefully. If you've always been complaining, angry and fearful, when you have all your full senses, that character will remain with you and give you a lot of suffering when you get dementia. So even then, you can actually see the start of what dying unhappily is. Even people who are sick and even in pain. So much of it is how you've lived your life before. If you complain about things, angry, negative, see the 2 bad bricks in the wall, then of course you'll have a very difficult time when you're dying. One of my favourite people in history, in religion, was a Catholic saint called St. Lawrence. He died in about 254 AD. He said a few wrong things, like many people do. I can relate to this. And in those days, if you said the wrong thing, you were in big trouble. He was executed. And he was executed in an incredibly cruel way. He was put on an iron plate, which was heated up and literally roasted alive. You can imagine how painful that would be. Whenever you burn yourself, on the oven cooking something, his whole body was being roasted. And you can check this out, absolutely true. His last recorded words before he lost consciousness was this. It was obviously in Latin, but this is how it translates in English. St. Lorenzo, turn me over, this side's done. As if it was a piece of toast. Now that I thought was wonderful, because it means that he totally transcended the pain of death. So much so he could tell a joke. And this is also true. I just found this out because I told this story a few days ago, and somebody checked it out on the internet, which you can do on Wikipedia, and I found out 2 other interesting things about this story. Number 1, the Catholic Church made him a patron saint of two professions. Look it up. That Saint Lorenzo is the patron saint of comedians and also the patron saint of cooks. Even the Catholic Church has a sense of humour. Good on you. So the patron saint of cooks is someone who was cooked to death as a punishment, but is also the patron saint of comedians, because even though under such pain he can still tell a joke. That showed he transcended the pain of death. The mental arrow he'd taken out. Physical arrow, still there. 95% of pain is mental. Has it ever happened to you? I remember treading on a nail once, went almost through my foot. It didn't hurt at all. Until somebody said, "Oh, that looks terrible." And then it started to hurt. Mental pain, for goodness sake. So that's most of it. So if you can train yourself in a bit of Buddhism, we can overcome the mental pain. We can die very happily, no matter what pain we are feeling. I've seen people do that. I notice how to deal with my own pain in my life, physical pain, leading to ill health. Very much like letting it go, not fighting it, embracing it, opening the door of your heart to whatever feeling is inside of you. Very quickly, how you do this, how you meditate, for goodness sake, don't concentrate when you're meditating. One of the most effective forms of meditation, which I've been teaching, which is brilliant, especially when you're sick, Emperor's 3 Questions. Hopefully you know that story. It's in my first book. This come from Tolstoy, in a little book of short stories he wrote. This was a person. I'm going over time. You don't mind, do you? Okay, get your money's worth. So Emperor's 3 Questions. There was in this story, Tolstoy imagined an emperor who had it up to here with religions, always arguing with each other. Who's the best religion? We're better than you are. Na 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 na. Unfortunately, religions do that too often instead of having harmony. Listen to one another. So he was fed up with organized religions. Being an emperor, decided to start his own religion. But simple and practical. And at the end of the story, he realized he only ever needed the answer to 3 questions. The when and the who and what to do. When is the most important time? Who is the most important person? What is the most important thing to do? And this is brilliant. This is Buddhism in a nutshell. And this is so practical. I also go to Hong Kong and give a talk there every year to the management. And the HR manager of Cathay Pacific, he liked this story so much, this is part of their training program. A whole course on the Emperor's 3 Questions. What is the most important time? Easy one. Now, it's the only time you ever have. This moment is where your future is being made. This is the only time you can do anything for your future. If you want to be peaceful, happy, now is where that happiness and peace and health is being made. Right now. It's the only time you ever have. It's the most important time. Who is the most important person? Now, you've read my book, you've heard my talks before. So the answer, when I first heard it, is I never expected this. This really turned me around. That's what a wisdom should do. Make you see things in a totally different way and a much better way. The most important person is one right in front of you. Here, Auntie, that's you right now. Not anymore. You're the most important person now, Hamza. And actually, you should be more often because you're putting me up tonight and giving me breakfast tomorrow morning, so I better look after you. So the one right in front is the most important. The most important thing to do is another beautiful one. Actually, I never finished that story about that young man, the doctor, who grew up with me, the Sri Lankan. He was the one who was about to resign from his job. as a doctor. First year as a doctor, one of his patients died. It was a young woman with a family. And even though you're not really supposed to feel guilty about anything, you do. If that's your patient and something goes wrong and they die, you feel so responsible, especially because he had to tell the husband, this young man, saying, you no longer have a wife. The love of your life is dead. The mother of your 2 children, I had 2 young children, is gone. And that was devastating for a young man still in the power of love with 2 kids to look after. That was just the whole world collapsing totally. And he had to be the one who told him that. So he immediately came to see me and said, I can't do this anymore. If this happens again, I can't do it. I can't even imagine doing this again. I have to look for another career. And that's when I told him, sir, you've not understood why you are a doctor, what the purpose of being a doctor is. The purpose of being a doctor is not to cure people. It's to care for people. If you think your job is to cure people, you will fail many, many times. But if you know your job is to care for people, you never ever need to fail. You can always care for people, but you can't always cure them. He got it straight away. And just a few months ago, one of my monks needed an endoscopy. We thought he had bowel cancer, quite honestly, because he has diarrhea with blood for a couple of months. And so when the doctor found out, he said, endoscopy as soon as possible. But to get one by the public system was going to take a couple of months. And so I told him, look, monastery can afford this, this is serious stuff. So I got private. And who do we get private? That doctor. So it never cost us a cent. As soon as he heard it was a Buddhist monk, he said, no, if you're Ajahn Brahm's disciple, free. So anyway, karma does come back. But the most important thing to do is not to cure people, to care for them. Please do not try and cure your husband. You're wasting your time. You'll just get frustrated. Care for him. Same with your wife. How many of you try and cure yourselves? Doesn't work. If you come here for self-improvement, come to the temple to try and make yourself a better person, it won't work. If you care for yourself, you learn how to be kind, open the door of your heart to yourself, then you change. If you care for your husband, care for your wife, then they change. Just like that doctor I said, if you care for more of your patients, instead of trying to cure them, your success rate will go up. More people will be leaving you totally cured of their ailments because you made care more important than cure. So the Emperor's 3 questions, the most important thing to do in life is not to cure problems. The most important thing to do is to care. That's all. Such a simple teaching. Now the most important time, the one in front of you is the most important person in the world. The most important thing to do is to care. So how does that relate to meditation? So simple. Now is the most important time. Whatever you're aware of right now, you're sleepy, you're restless, you're having some sexual fantasy, you're planning how you're going to poison your husband, whatever it is you're doing right now, good or bad, that is the most important thing in the whole world. And I say that because it makes meditation so easy. Whatever it is right now is really important. What should you do? Just care for it. Don't try and cure it, get rid of it. Care for this moment. It's important. Right now. And that's all you ever need to get into the deepest of meditations. So that's actually, if you do that, you're dying. People ask, can I meditate when I'm dying? You can't watch your breath, because sometimes you haven't got any breath to watch, you're dying. Be aware of your bodily feelings, they're too disgusting to be able to notice. But whatever's happening right now at your death, right now, this moment. Not what's going to happen next, not what happened before, right now, and give it importance. Don't try and cure it and get better. Care for it. Now the most important time, whatever you're experiencing right now, is the most important thing in the whole world for you, and care for it. If you do that, you will die happily. If you try and cure it, you'll have more problems and work to do. You'll have a lot of suffering. You just care for this moment as you're dying. In this moment, it's important. And then you'll die happily and peacefully. And you'll get an incredible, amazing rebirth, if you get one at all. People ask about enlightenment. It's like after you're dead, it's like a buzz taking you off to your next life. If it can find you, if you are so still because you don't want anything, nothing at all, means you're so still, you become invisible, and the buzz comes and can't find you and goes off without you. You're gone. It's a wonderful description of enlightenment. If you want anything at all, anything, even the slightest thing, slightest bit of craving, desire, wanting, control, instead of caring, then you'll find you move, and the bus will know you're there. And off you go, having to do this all over again. And to understand what I mean by all over again, one of the other amazing things which happens, which I've got lots of evidence about, many of you may have had the experience before, when you give birth and your babies start talking. Just like in the time of the Buddha. He's supposed to have talked when he came out of his mother's womb. And I thought that was a lot of superstition, until people came out to me and said, no, that has happened to them. The first couple, they weren't even Buddhists. I don't know if they were Christians, and maybe just ordinary Australians. Man and woman, they came to see me because they were spooked. They had 2 children. One had just come back from hospital with a mum, just been born. The other was a couple of years older. The older kid was told by his mum and dad, say goodnight to your baby brother and go to bed. So the older kid, and say his name was Peter and Paul. I forget the real names. I always say the same thing because I can't remember what the names were. I say they're Peter and Paul. Elder boy Peter leaned over the little cot where the baby was laying and said, good night, Paul. And that's when Paul said, good night, Peter. The little baby spoke. And the two parents could not believe what they heard. So they paid attention this time. And without any prompting, the elder kid, Paul, or whichever one, I'll get the names wrong way around again. The older boy, Paul, said to his baby brother, good night, Peter. And this time, with them both paying full attention, the baby said again, good night, Peter, to his elder brother. And they said, interestingly, it was not in a baby's voice, it was like an adult voice, but his baby spoke. And so that was the first time. I've got many other cases since, which parents usually don't want to tell anybody because they think they're crazy. But the best one was reported from the United States in maternity ward in front of the midwives and I think doctor in attendance. As soon as the baby came out of the womb, I think still the umbilical cord connected, the baby looked around and uttered the unforgettable words in English. Everyone could hear it. Oh no, not again. And he said that, and I can appreciate it. Oh no, not again. More nappies, more dummies shoved in your mouth when you want to say something. You can't express what you really want. Having to go to school all over again. Oh no, not again. So be careful. If you think you've done with going to school and nappies and baby food and all of that, be careful if you don't do the right thing and learn how to die happily and not even get reborn. That's the best happiness. That's actually how it works. Why do you get reborn? Because you want to. Simple as that. You say, I don't want to be reborn. That's another type of wanting. If you can't let go of wanting enough to get into deep meditation now, you're not going to be able to do it when you die. So I always say that meditation is a training how to die. Dying 101 is taught here. When do you teach meditation here, Venerable? Wednesday evening. Please change the title from meditation to how to die taught. How to die happily and not get reborn. That'd be more popular than just teaching meditation, I think. Anyway, I've talked long enough. So now can we have a bit of Q&A? Have we got time? Oh yeah, I'm full of energy. Questions and answers. Okay, yes, first one.
What do you say to someone who's
Afraid of die. Oops. You say, look, you've done it many times before. You know, what you be afraid of? So if they are afraid of dying, what exactly are you afraid of? Sometimes you're afraid of something which we don't know. People are afraid of the dark. Or look, people being afraid of ghosts. You know, with my friend Bernard Carr, we go hunting ghosts. And I think he's now the treasurer of the Psychic Research Society in London. It's real. Oops. Ooh. That's ghosts. Please be quiet, ghosts, while I'm giving my talk. So he's the president of the treasurer of the Psychic Research Society. And in all the years that the London Psychic Research Society has been in operation, never once, they've seen many ghosts, never once has a ghost ever hurt anybody. They can't do that. There's some reason why, and they don't know why, but the evidence, empirical evidence, they are harmless. And I know that as a fact, being a monk. They cannot harm, they can only make you scared. But you actually have got more power than any ghost. My simile is like an elephant and a mouse. Which is a stronger animal, an elephant or a mouse? Can a mouse kill an elephant? Can an elephant kill a mouse? Oh, sure. Just one little step and squashed. The same with human beings and ghosts. Human beings are far more powerful. We're like the elephant, scared of a little mouse. So this is no joke, this is serious. If you ever come across a ghost and you don't want it to be around, all you need to do is tell it, get out of here, be firm. Show you're not afraid, and the ghost has to go. You are more powerful. Please always remember that. It's only in movies that the ghosts are scary. In real life, they're just ordinary beings. And actually, indistinguishable for real human beings. The one sitting right next to you, right now, could be a ghost. So anyway, that wasn't your question, was it? Do I ask the question again? Was it someone's scared of dying? Yeah. Are they scared of dying or scared of death? Two different things.
They're afraid of the process of letting go loved ones.
Oh look, letting go loved ones. If you really want, you can get reborn again. Same family, just like these other people I was saying. Letting go of loved ones. My goodness, it's okay. Similarly, my father died when I was only 16. I was never afraid or sad about letting him go. I never cried at his death. He died at home, just in Lexton Road in Acton. Just that's where I spent many years. And actually, also the other famous person who lived there was John Entwistle from The Who. Neighbours. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent again. But when my father died, in the house, shook him to see if he could wake him up, but he was dead. So it's important that you felt death. I never felt sad then, never felt sad at the funeral, never cried at the funeral, never cried since, ever, and I love my father. He was the one who taught me, open the door of your heart. That was his story. And never felt sad and wondered why. How can you love somebody so much and not feel sad at their death? Answer was simile of a concert. Here in London, I wasn't born a monk. I used to go to concerts. Actually, there was a cinema just down the road in Chiswick. 11 years of age, and the Rolling Stones were playing in the cinema. And I managed to sneak in, underage, see the Rolling Stones in 1962. It was just down the road from here. And I remember many other concerts I used to go to. There's one concert I will never forget in the north of London, in the top room of a pub, and there was a band playing there, and only six people turned up. My brother and I were 2 of those 6. And really surprised actually the band played for us. It's like a private concert. And I read in the newspaper that the lead singer recently got knighted. You know who he was? Rod Stewart. I had a private concert with Rod when I was young. Or Sir Rod, as he is now. But anyway, I loved music in those days, not just rock music, jazz, folk, classical music. And I always remember, at the end of the concert, there'd be an encore. Stand up, shout for more, and the band would always play a few more numbers. Just like my father. He died a couple of times, was revived, he came so close to death, he gave us a few encores before he finally made his exit. So after all those encores, when the concert was finished, and I'd walk out from the concert halls, clubs, pubs, I never cried at the end of a concert. I never ever felt sad. Instead I felt how lucky I was to have been there for these incredible performances from some of the best music of the world here in London. How lucky I was. And I went away feeling blessed, privileged, never ever forgetting that music. I just described some of it to you. This was like when my father died. What a wonderful concert that was. And how lucky, privileged, blessed I was to have had such a dad. Thank you so much. I never felt sadness at all. To this day I never felt tears. I felt the opposite, being privileged. Once you can understand death like that, then it's just like a concert you're being with. Every concert has to end. Another concert comes next week, but you never forget. The person won't last, but the memories, the love, the happiness you share together, that stays with you forever, for many lifetimes. So you don't lose anything when somebody dies. It's like you gain something. The concert is over, but I wouldn't have given that up for the world. Thank you. That's how we take away the fear of death, by changing our perception of it. To be something like a concert. When you go to a concert, you always know it's going to end. Doesn't mean you don't go on that concert, but you enjoy the time you have there, knowing it's going to end. Does that answer the question a bit better? Okay. Yeah, please stop me when you go over time, otherwise I'll be all night. Yes, there's one over here.
What is the Buddhist explanation for mental illnesses, and does meditation help to protect one's mind?
Oh yeah, one of the biggest of mental illnesses is the depression, and where that comes from, because when I was young there was not that much depression around, and my theory of this is only a theory, but I'm pretty on the spot most times, on the money most times, but I can't have money, so say it on the spot, that we work so hard these days. We don't know how to take time off, we don't know how to rest. Even when we are resting, our brain is just working so hard, much more than when I was young. You are too tired. Your brain wears out quickly because you don't know how to relax and just be. I often say I travel around the world a lot. It's very rare to see human beings. Even in London, on the tube today, I don't think I saw any human being on the tube. All I saw were human goings, not being. Human doing things, not just sitting there. because we do too much, our brain runs out of power. And I think if we could learn how to be more still, preserve our energies, where we don't have to think, why should you think? Remember a famous saying from the Prime Minister, I remember his name, Harold Macmillan, during 1966, Six-Day War between Israel and many other countries. I think he was not Prime Minister anymore, but still an elder statesman. A journalist interviewed him and asked him, "What do you think about the problem in the Middle East?" Without hesitation he replied, "Sir, there is no problem in the Middle East." "How can you say that?" said the journalist. "There's a war going on as we speak." And this great wise Prime Minister said, "Sir, a problem is something with a solution. There is no solution in the Middle East, therefore it can't be a problem." That's such powerful, cutting logic, but it also has great meaning in our lives. Why do we worry about thinking about things which aren't problems? They haven't got solutions. Your thoughts are wasting precious mental energy, wearing yourself out. Like driving a car without really maintaining it, it doesn't last that long. So a lot of this is a case of tiredness, chronic tiredness. And I think you all know what I mean. You never have enough sleep. And quite frankly, if anybody wants to make a fortune here in London, just have a sleep centre. Just a place where you cannot get any mobile phone signals. Don't say you have to hand in your smartphones, because people will smuggle them in. Screen it so you cannot get any signal at all there. All you've got is beds, comfortable beds, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whenever you want, any time of the day, so you can just catch up on your sleep, nothing else. No meditation, no yoga. You do it if you want to, but just to sleep, nothing else. If such a facility was available, how many of you would like to spend a few days there? Hands are going up. Of course, because people don't get enough sleep in today's world. When we go holidays, what do? Shopping, touring, seeing the sights. What you really need is just have some rest. And because we don't get any rest, that is why we get angry and grumpy. Honestly, if you have a partner who's always angry at you, just send them off to a place and just go and take a sleep for a few days. And then come out afterwards, they feel quite good. They don't need to get angry and upset anymore. That's one of the biggest problems, is tiredness. And you know where I learnt that from? I was doing a youth seminar in Kuala Lumpur, from 15 to 25 years of age. Chinese Buddhists in Malaysia. There's about maybe 600 or 700 of them. And one of the monks gave them a questionnaire. What is your most difficult emotion you have to deal with as a young man or young woman, 15 to 25 years of age? And the answer was tiredness. It beat everything else. And that really shook me. Young people today, they're so exhausted. Just being able to do their homework, do their studies, get on in life, their social life, parents always pushing them, so much to do, staying up really late at night, getting assignments in. You're killing the youth, pressurising them. 15 to 25 years of age and they're already complaining about being chronically tired. That's making depression for a future, and anger as well. People who can't live with one another. And of course, you know that even with you. Tiredness is what causes most arguments in a family. And also other sort of emotional problems as well. Even schizophrenia. There's an article which I read recently from Finland. Good on the Finns, you've got it. They were using a different method, which you heard a few moments ago, not to cure the schizophrenia, but to care for it, with incredible results. So in other words, they had a person with schizophrenia, with great hallucinations, and instead of saying, you're mad, you're crazy, don't believe in those things, they were acknowledging the reality of a person who saw the world in a totally different way. Not demeaning them, saying it was wrong and needed to be cured. They were actually being loved, instead of treated as a person as something wrong with you. And that had huge effects on them. They still had the hallucinations, but they had far less power over these people who had schizophrenia. Cutting edge treatment, straight down the line Buddhist. Caring, not curing. And that's another biggest of the problems, schizophrenia. Interesting, isn't it, that here, what you've heard here, things like Emperor's Three Questions, is incredibly powerful. Understanding that too much time we're trying to control things, change things, as I say, in relationship, trying to change your partner, change your kids, and it doesn't work instead of trying to care for them. Wouldn't you like to be cared for instead of changed? It's terrible, isn't it, when people are always trying to tell us that we should change, we should be better people, more smart, more pretty, more intelligent, more rich, a much better speaker, keep to your time and subject to Ajahn Brahm. You might try and cure me, but I'm afraid it's too late.
And regarding schizophrenia, I came across this theory that it might be previous lives kind of coming back at you in different voices that you hear. I don't know whether there's any truth in that.
I can't really sort of understand that, because much of this stuff is nothing to do with the previous life, but it's really delusional, something which is totally against my reality. But the problem is that we're allowed to see things in a different way, but when it makes you antisocial, when you can't really live your own life in a sense of freedom and look after yourself, that becomes something which we have to deal with, because the delusions can kill other people. So in order to lessen the impact of those delusions, rather than to get rid of them, the caring for them means that people still have some delusions, but they don't affect them so much. They're there, but they're not so powerful. And a lot of times it's because people feel rejected, misunderstood, not appreciated, and that makes the delusions stronger. Makes things much worse. As you know, when you're not understood, you're not accepted, you feel there's something wrong with you, whatever it is, that makes that stronger. Become more antisocial. You're not loved, you're not cared for, you're not appreciated, you're not listened to, you're not respected. But just because you're different. Remember the time when gay people weren't respected? We can cure you. We can take you to give you some medication. We can cure you. It's a disease, a sickness. It's not a sickness. It's to be cared for, accepted, respected. So this is the same with some mental diseases as well. You change the attitude and it's a whole new ballgame. You know, I'm going to Toronto again over in next June. Every time I go to Toronto, I'm invited to give a lecture in a university course, Buddhism, medicine and psychology. You all know how Buddhism gets involved in psychology, in big time. But this is now medicine. It's looking at Buddhism to see how we can get these amazing techniques which work to actually to be in mainstream hospitals. And it's incredible, just the results. There's one thing, this is a monk, because you've been meditating, you've got insights, you see what's going on. Maybe my background as a scientist helps. Every emotion, every mental state has a corresponding physical feeling in your body. When you're aware of your body, when you're afraid, when you're angry, when you're guilty, when you have anxiety, it has a different experience in a different place in your body. Seeing that gives you the method of how to overcome those fears, anxieties. The anxiety is the one which I first focused on. A young girl in Adelaide had chronic anxiety. She was at university, bedridden. The university doctors and psychologists could not help her. She was fortunate her uncle was a strong supporter of mine. Told her, ring Ajahn Brahm. And I asked her, as soon as she said the problem, bedridden, with that chronic anxiety, really big time, I asked her, where do you feel it in your body when you have a panic attack? She said, my chest tenses up. I said, where in your chest? Oh, just in my chest. Not good enough. I want coordinates, from your navel. And she was science background, so I said, give me a call in 3 days' time when you can let me know. Now that was achieving a couple of goals. Number one, I was very busy, so please don't bother me every day. Give her something to. Another thing was giving her something to do. Give her some control over her treatment. Because one of the other things with being sick or mental disease, you lose all your autonomy, and with it your pride. Other people are telling you what to do. And that really takes away one of the most important parts of a human sense of well-being. That you are in charge of your treatment, in charge of your life, instead of somebody ordering you what to do. Not many people will take that, except when you're sick. When you believe in doctors so much, instead of believing in yourself and taking control over your treatment, you allow other people to take control, and that is psychologically kills you. So, giving her some control over her treatment. 3 days later she gave coordinates, really sharp coordinates, about 4 inches above my navel, a little bit to the left. It feels like a sphere about 2 inches wide, a circle. I said, great, now describe the feeling. She said, well, it's just tense, not good enough, give me another call in 3 days. In 3 days she gave me the call, a very good description of what it feels like to have a panic attack. That was not just giving her control, but teaching her how to be mindful, to be so aware of the feeling. Next, I said, get your hand and massage that feeling whenever you have an anxiety attack. Massage it really softly and kindly. And if you can't do it, she had a living boyfriend called Lloyd, and he said, if you can't do it because you feel too tired, get your boyfriend to do it. Boys, I think, will be very happy to massage their girlfriends' chests. This has a wonderful ending to it. So, give me a call in 3 days. So she did that. She massaged her chest when she had an anxiety attack. She knew the feeling, massaged it. What happened to the feeling in your chest? So it went away. And then I asked her the question, what happened to the anxiety, the panic? And it's this beautiful pause. They call it light bulb moments. When people, they get it. And said, it went away too. Fine. Now you know how to treat your own anxiety disorder. Don't try and treat it in your mind. You're not smart enough to actually control your mind, but you can control how your mind affects your body. Control the body, massage it, until the pain, the feeling associated with the panic disappears. Then the panic goes. 2 weeks later, out of hospital, back to university, that she put in a suggestion. She nominated me for Australian of the Year that year. I never got it, but I was very quite sort of honoured that she had thought of that, because I saved her life. Then she married a Lloyd, and guess who did the marriage blessing for them? And just about 10 days ago, she came to visit with Lloyd and her 2 lovely kids. Always comes to say hello. I'm her monk because I literally did save her life. And it's a so simple teaching. Every emotion will have a physical counterpart. Know that physical counterpart to anger, fear, guilt, even depression. Don't try and fix it up in your head. You're much more aware of your body. Fix it up in your body with a bit of kindness. And when that fear, anxiety, guilt, whatever it is, comes up in your body, give it some kindness. Massage is the most wonderful way. And then the corresponding emotion goes as well. Problem solved. So simple. No medications. No expensive psychiatrists or psychologists. Do it yourself. Self-help. Name of the game. But you know that person who went into the bookshop and he went to the counter and said, please tell me where the self-help section is. And the person on the counter said, sir, if I told you, it would defeat the purpose. I love that joke. Okay, that's a long answer, but it's a very good question. Anyone else before we finish off? What time do we have to finish, Venerable? Okay, so we've got another 10 minutes. Yeah. Anyone from over that direction over there? Yes, people over there. Yeah, good, yeah.
In the society that we live in, as in modern society, so I work in the city, is it possible to end up at that stillness?
Easy. So
And
simple.
maintain
So you can't. Absolutely. So simple. Okay, this is one of my old similes. I said this 2 years ago when I was here. How heavy is this glass of water? I even told this at Imperial College once. And some smart aleck said, I reckon that's about 148 grams. Engineers. That's not what I mean. How heavy is this glass of water? The answer is, the longer I hold it, the heavier it feels. After 1 minute, I start to ache. A minute and a half, I'll be in pain. 2 minutes, I'll be in agony. And a very stupid monk. What should I do when this gets too heavy to hold comfortably? Put it down and rest. Just rest my arm, just for about 20 seconds, that's all. Pick it up again. Honestly, it does feel lighter. It's easier now. If you don't believe me, try it at home. Now, what's this got to do with your question? The stress in your life has nothing to do with you working in the city. Nothing to do with all the stuff you have to complete in your life. I mention this, I do a lot of work. Okay, here's my list of stuff I do. I am the abbot of a big monastery in Australia. 22 monks, about 4 or 5 training to be monks, and about a big, how many acres? About 340 acres of land. Opposite we have a big retreat centre, another $5 million retreat centre, holding retreats there. So many retreats every year. Always seem to be over there teaching. So teaching lay people retreats, also looking after a big Buddhist centre, usually about 250 to 300 people every Friday night for the talk, which you can see live on YouTube, and a big sort of committee looking after. I'm very proud of our centre because it's not just Sri Lankans. We serve Sri Lanka community, the Thai community. When His Majesty the King of Thailand died, 7 days of chanting for them. All the Thais were coming in there, the place was being packed, had to kick them out because now's the time for meditation and a talk, come and go home. So serving so many different communities, obviously Malaysians, Singaporeans, and also Australians. Serving all of those communities, and in my spare time, looking after Buddhist Society of Victoria in Melbourne. Just started another new monastery over there, Newbury Monastery, and Santee Monastery in Sydney, where I'm the spiritual director. I also started Australia Sangha Association, trying to bring all the monks and nuns throughout the whole of Australia together. So I keep that going as well. And then also overseas, we got the Brahm Centre, you know who that was named after, in Singapore, and the Buddhist Fellowship and Bodhinyana, they're all my groups in Singapore. Look after the Buddhist Gem Fellowship in Malaysia, they're in Kuala Lumpur. Then still got a huge number of disciples over in Thailand, go there every year to teach a retreat. And then over in Korea, I've got a lot of people over there who keep asking me to go back. In Sri Lanka, the Ajahn Brahm Society. So I've got franchises. Mutt Brahms, I call them. And so, how can you do all that work? And still write books? And all this other stuff which you have to do? How can you do all of that without getting stressed out? Honestly, do I look stressed out? That's one of the reasons I wish I was more stressed out and worried more, because I'd lose weight then. Because when you worry a lot, actually people tell me you lose weight. And I am a bit overweight, so I'm trying to worry some more to try and lose weight, but it doesn't work. So you can do all that. You know how I do that? When it gets too heavy, I put it down and rest. Some people say, I've got no time to rest. You don't get it. When I rest for, say, half an hour in meditation, I become efficient. I get 3 hours work done in 2. How many of you at work, where have you gone over there, you don't produce much in the afternoon when you're tired? Ideas don't come to you. You can't even type an email quickly. You make mistakes. Why? Because your brain is not working efficiently. It needs a rest. That particular simile got so popular, it is taught in Harvard Business School. My simile, I don't care who uses it, taught in Harvard Business School, they call it an investment of time. That's how it works. You relax and be still. Half an hour, however long it takes, an hour. When you come out afterwards, you've got more energy. You don't waste time, you're making time by being more efficient in the use of your brain. So simple. I don't know why a monk has to discover this, but it's one of the reasons why Google, Facebook have all got meditation rooms. I went there a couple of years ago. I'm really a cool monk. I teach in Facebook and in Google. Headquarters, Mountain View. Facebook, their address. You know their address in Mountain View? Number 1, Hacker Drive. They built the street, they named it. Hacker Drive. Hacker. Like, you know, hackers of computer hackers. So anyway, that's actually how you can live in the city and be more still and be more productive and get ahead in your career. Okay, last question before I finish off. Going. I think it's time to go. Okay, I'll be quick. I'll give it. It's not the question which needs to be quick. The answer will have to be quick.
Hi, I'm a local GP. One of the questions I get asked is, Doc, how long have I got to live?
Yeah.
You probably face the same question.
Yeah.
How do you answer that?
It's however long you want. So don't think the doctor has the power to decide how long you have to live. It really is up to you. Take power over your illness. So don't just let other people decide. You decide. It's incredible when people realize they have a choice, responsibility, how that can actually affect them. So many people I know personally in my life as a monk, that one of my fellows is this Thai monk called Ajahn Brahm. He was in a hospital in Bangkok being treated at the expense of the king for cancer. Every treatment they knew they gave him, nothing worked. He said, I only got a short time to live now. If I'm going to die, I might as well die in my monastery. So he went back to his monastery, and I think he died about 30 years later. So, one of my favourite doctors, he was the head of medicine in Royal Prince Alfred Hospital in Sydney, because the GP told me this. He said when he went to medical school, first year, the head of the school gave the welcoming address to them with the words of a great scientist. And the words were this: 50% of what we're going to teach you in the next 4 years is wrong. Our problem is we don't know which 50% it is. Now that is a scientist. That's a doctor. You're learning on the job. You will always learn. Every day you're a doctor or GP, you'll learn something new. And never ever allow your learning, what you've been taught at university or medical school, to stand in the way of the truth. The truth is something you can feel and know on the job. Sometimes that happens. You see a patient there, everything in the book says, this is what I should do, or you're going to die. But the truth is something much more that can be expressed in any book. Be intuitive. Sometimes take a few chances. What you feel is right. And you'll be a much greater physician. And always remember caring. Caring is much better than curing. And then you'll find your patients, all of them get better. And those which die, at least they die knowing they've been cared for. It changes the whole ballgame. Okay, I couldn't answer your question in detail, so because otherwise I get into trouble with the boss. And he's my landlord tonight, so if I go over time he might kick me out and I might be under a bridge tonight. But he would never do that. He's such a kind, wonderful monk, really good friend. I told him this morning that we're related. We've got the same father.
Yes. I did ask Bhante, do you have any brothers and sisters? And said, we are all brothers because we all are Buddhist monks, follow Buddhist sons. We are brothers. That was the answer. So we have been here 2 hours listening to Bhante. No one wants to leave. Thank you very much, Bhante. I came to know that yesterday you have come all the way from Australia to here without any feeling of jet lag. You gave such a wonderful talk, beautiful stories, heal our mind. It is a memorable evening for all of us. Now we don't have any kind of fear to die. On behalf of our community, we all had a wonderful evening, making us so laugh, and we learned a lot of stories and develop our insight. Thank you very much. And one of the purposes of this sermon to support the Anukampa project is a nuns residence going to establish in London. So I hope you will help to the project. And thank you for coming. Thank you, and wish you long life, Bhante. Thank you very much. I know you never forget to visit the Vihara. Whenever you visit London, you come and give a good support for us. And we are honored, actually. We are honored. Thank you.